there are two arguments when we've even debated the merits of national standards that are given. One, everyone who beats us on international exams has national standards, every country, and it just makes no sense to have a modern nation and have 50 state standards. The first argument is ridiculously superficial. If you've seen the test scores and you've looked to see which countries have national standards, most of the ones that do better than we do have national standards. So do most of the ones that do worse than we do. So I could, if I wanted to be dishonest, just come up and say, we don't want Common Core. Almost all the countries that do worse than we do have national standards, so we don't want them. The reality is there just is no correlation. So to argue that we should have them because the countries that tend to do better than we do have them makes no sense. And the fact of the matter is some countries that have done better than we do or have don't have national standards. Canada doesn't even have a National Department of Education. Australia doesn't have national standards, at least didn't during most of these tests. So that one's blown apart. If you go into the deeper empirical research where they try and control for lots of factors that lead to academic outcomes, income and things like that, to isolate the effect of having national standards, they find the only way it might have an effect is if national standards are tied to tests with high stakes for kids. So you don't pass grade if you don't do well in the test. However, once you control for the culture of these countries, even that goes out the window. In other words, there is no meaningful empirical evidence that national standards do any good. And then the 50 state standards, the idea just doesn't make sense in a modern nation. It's true. You don't want 50 centralized standards. What you need, modern or not modern nation, is an education system where unique individual students, because that's what kids are, they're not identical cogs, can get an education best suited to their unique needs. And that means you need to have a free market. You need to have freedom where educators can specialize in the needs of particular subgroups of kids, where they compete for people's business, and where that competition leads to innovation, where you work hard to do things better and more efficiently because that is how you get customers. So it's true, it doesn't make sense to have 50 state standards. But national standards goes in the exact opposite direction of where we need to go, completely the wrong direction, saying that apparently every child in America is exactly the same. Finally, a little bit on this data mining issue. Now, people will say that Common Core requires data mining. And we'd get in a lot of trouble for that. Common Core was coerced as part of something called Race to the Top, as I said. That also included mandates for states to include data collection on all students to make it interoperable. There are other federal laws that also talk about expanding data collection on students. And Common Core is part of this overall context, and that's what you need to understand. And here's what they're aiming at. The ultimate goal is you collect as much information as you can on kids so that you can, at least this is one goal, isolate everything that goes into a child outside of school, and then you can say which schools are doing a good job. You can say, now we know the effect of the school versus the student. Or use that to say, well, here's how we'll change students. We'll change their nutrition, we'll change their bus schedules. We have collection of data about religion and all sorts of things like that. So the data mining isn't in Common Core. Common Core is part of it. That's where you control for the variable of standards and what kids are learning. So it's important to understand that. They've also killed FERPA, which protects your child's data from being released to anybody without your permission and things like that. So Common Core is just the leading edge, really, of a 50-year drive toward federal control. And I hope you can see that now in this trajectory. And despite massive evidence of both federal failure, because you can look at huge increase in federal spending, flat test scores for 17-year-olds. Despite this massive evidence of federal failure and the vacuum of support for standardization or nationalization, we continue to move in the wrong direction.